Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 14th day of January 2019. Well, I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. It's been, we've had a lot of freezing fog here on the high desert. That's one of the things we get here is the fog will roll in and it coats the trees and makes them look like they're flocked Christmas trees. And so we had that this weekend. It was really pretty. Normally, we don't. It reminds me of valley fog, but it's not. It's not like valley fog. It's different. What we don't have over here are the big ice storms that the Portland and Salem area gets. I don't know if Eugene. Well, Eugene I think gets it too, but I remember they used to call them silver thaws. And we had moved here when I was beginning sixth grade from Alaska. So our first winter in Portland, we had a silver thaw. And I mean, winters were brutal up there. There was one winter where we were living in Wasilla and it was 57 below. So you didn't go anywhere, you know. Up there, you have to have a oil pan warmer on your car, so you have to plug your car in at night during the winter, so it'll start in the morning, you know. So it wasn't that I wasn't accustomed to such things, but I had never seen anything like this in my life. After living up there for 6 years, coming to Portland and seeing a silver thaw was insane because it's nothing but ice, and I mean thick ice, you know, thick ice. So you might have come out to an inch of ice on your car, which is nuts. It's like it doesn't brush off with one of those snow brushes. So it was very odd to see that, to come from someplace like Alaska to have a silver thaw our first winter here in Oregon. That was in 1968. I even remember the year. So anyhow, today, being a 14 day, that reduces to 5. So numerologically, we're talking change. 5 also symbolizes the pentagram or all elements in balance. Earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. Or the Akash, however you want to view that. So we'll see. I haven't finished the lunar transits. I'm going to do that as soon as I'm done here. And so that'll be up on the blog because the moon moves today in about 45 minutes actually from now. So I need to finish it up. I'm almost done. And I just got tired last night and I just stopped and watched some TV instead. But I'll finish that up this morning and get that posted. But I also, we had some news come out about that guy in the Oval Office again this weekend, and about the investigation into whether or not he was a traitor. Anyway, I grabbed my Heindel deck. I'd been thinking about using my Heindel deck in a tarot reading, and I love it. It's just one of the most incredible decks I've ever seen, and so I really like it. There's so much symbolism. It's almost off-putting. There's so much symbolism to it. But it incorporates runes, and I don't understand Hebrew, so I don't understand the Hebrew glyphs on there or anything, so I don't interpret those. And he puts runes on some of the cards, and also hexagrams or guas from the I Ching, and so I just love all that stuff, and so I really love the deck. Anyway, it's a 6-card spread. I'm going to do that one here and write that up, maybe today, probably today after I finish the lunar transit. But I asked myself, I just questioned, normally I just look at influences, right? But I'm not really so much about predictive stuff. I think there's just too many probabilities that exist within the whole structure that can be chosen, and you just don't know. Anything can happen. So I like to just look at influence. But I said to myself, okay, so what now? What now? Because it just seems like, the end is near. So I don't know how it could be. So anyhow, I did that one, and I'm going to interpret it and see what it has to say. See if it's worth putting up on the blog. I haven't really looked at it too much. Just kind of glanced at it and went, oh, that's interesting. But I ended with the magician, so anytime I do that, it's like, oh, let's see what this has to tell us today. Plus, I think the tower is in it as well. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's count 13 and see what we have for today, though. Getting old, though, isn't it? So we have the Two of Pentacles. Now, if it were the Two of Swords, I'd say we have a decision to make. But here we're juggling priorities, maybe. It can still be a decision, or trying to, he's standing on one foot, trying to balance on one foot. He's got a very tall hat on, doesn't he? You see the boats on the back of the water. The water's very choppy. You got choppy seas behind. So you've got, some emotions that would indicate some rocky emotions, maybe surrounding a decision having to do with physical issues, our mundane issues, our home life, our wealth, our finances, our career, the direction in life. Maybe we're having to make a decision. So obviously, where are we going? Well, we have to make a decision, and it involves our foundation, doesn't it? Let me just see if there's something else that I missed on this. But you see the lemniscate, you see almost, it's like a gear, the gear of life, the infinity symbol. It never ends. It just keeps on progressing. And so you want to have even balanced progression, right? Well, life doesn't always give us that, does it? Oh, how about that? I just turned right to it. Yeah, change, harmony, simple living, balance, trust connection with source. I have juggle two things at once. But the idea is that there's some kind of balance that needs to be achieved. It looks like here, you've got one that's maybe a little, you've got one higher than the other. So that could indicate that whatever is happening may have something to do with oppression of a group. And then with the rocky seas behind them, it's creating emotional issues. Well, when you can't go to work, or you go to work and you're not getting paid, and you can't, you might lose your home, or you can't pay for childcare or whatever, but you still got to go to work. Because if you don't, you might lose that job eventually, but you can't go get another one because no one will hire you because it's just temporary. So, So I guess many of us are juggling, some really mundane and foundational and life issues right now. And maybe we're feeling a little bit like, there's somebody else who's doing who's the puppeteer for all of this, and we're having to, stand on one foot and try to figure it out, and, hold our nose just the right way. And maybe the wind will blow the right direction, and it'll bring the right thing to us, well, good Lord, we shouldn't have to do that. No one should. And the shutdown, dummy. You're losing. You lost. You lost before you began, if everything's true. Don't take us all down with you. Let's count 13 and see what else we can add to this, because this is interesting. I mean, this thing just interpreted itself, didn't it? Well, we have the devil. 15th card of the major arcana. Kind of not what you think, but yeah, kind of what you think. So, believe it or not, 15 reduces to 6, which is higher self energies. But here we're slave to desire. Someone is. Here we have the horned one above, who's supposed to symbolize Satan and the ego, and being a slave to the ego. You can see they're chained, right? You got a man and a woman there, signifying the masculine and feminine presence within, the duality within. He's just menacing looking, isn't he? I mean, check out his face. You see the pentagram pointing downward into form. This is not a card of Satanism. It's a card of the ego within and having to balance all of that. And clearly, when you see one that's higher than the other, then we need to we can either attribute this to needing spirit to inform. The balance needs to be heavily weighted on spirit, I should say. I'll say it that way. Or in terms of influence, if it's going to be between spirit and ego, you want spirit to be heavily weighted in that sense. You want spirit informing ego and putting the boundaries on what ego does. Because here ego's taken over. Or it could indicate by its height that there's oppression involving something foundational in our lives. And we basically become slaves to someone else's ego or to our own. So perhaps something that's going on in your personal life, if this isn't about, the greater, societal issue that's going on, caused by the guy in the Oval Office, if it's not that, if you're experiencing something else in your life, perhaps you're doing something in a way that is thinking more about yourself than for the greater good of, say, of your family. Maybe you're wanting to spend money in a way that is not going to serve your family well. Maybe you're. It reminds me of parents who are off in the bar, or off playing and leaving the kids home. They're not focused on what's going on. They're not, maybe the house is a mess, maybe the yard's a mess, maybe nobody's taking care of anything because mom and dad are down at the bar all night long, right? So that would be a really obvious and simple example of the devil in play in someone's life when they can't see that they have things to do and deal with and be responsible for. So in a sense here, you're looking at someone who's juggling responsibilities and trying to figure out how we're going to balance all of that. And the last thing we want to do is be a slave to the desires within. Because if we do that, then, nothing's going to get done. It's just going to be, we're going to be chained to that. And we aren't going to see that a bigger picture is needing some attention. So last week, I was showing you guys some runes that I made. And I kind of toyed with the idea. I said, well, maybe I ought to just, take a set of runes and use them for a week. Because I've been using my Hawthorne runes. And I just thought it might be nice to use something else. Now, some of them, like my juniper runes, are kind of hard to see. The wood is real dark and it's variegated and whatnot. And so it's kind of hard to see them. I'll use them anyway, maybe one day. And then I think also the black locust ones, it's a really interesting wood. And the tree is it's gorgeous. I just love it. But again, it's the same sort of thing. So I showed you last week, I did a couple of readings with the willow runes. Today, I'm going to use my apple ones. And they're a little bit bigger and they're really nice. And so I'm going to pull one of those here in a second here. I'm going to let them fall through my hand. And I'm using a different type of rune bag here that pulls together like this. And I make, if I usually crochet all my rune bags if I can. I don't know why, I just do. I like to use the Sock Ease yarn. Lion Brand makes a yarn called Sock Ease, and it's kind of stretchy, and it is good for doing socks and tightly like tight mittens or something, or those wristies you can make. I like to use it for that. So, but I think what I'm going to do, if I'm going to use this tomorrow, I think I'm going to get a different bag. I'll dump one out, dump the Hawthorne ones out and use it. So, oh, I'll use. You can see the three. It symbolizes the elk. So you can see the antlers up above here symbolizing Awen, air, fire, and water, accessing the Bifrost Bridge, the Rainbow Bridge of Soul. I love this one. I actually have a bind rune, not a bind rune. I have an amulet that is. I have one that's Hagalaz, and I also have one that's Alyes. But it's the blending of air, fire, and water into earth. Is what this is. So it shows all elements. Can't forget about this lower one because that's earth. But the idea is that this is spirit informing. Okay, this is higher self presence. Alyes is, and let's see which one it is here. Alyes is the 15th rune of the Elder Futhark. So again, 6, and it aligns with the devil. The devil is just basically reminding us that, we need to allow spirit to inform things. We get so caught up in ego that we're not able to see the forest for the trees, basically. It's always about us versus them, isn't it? You're always trying to establish an enemy and see someone else as the other. And the idea behind Alyes is that one of the things I wrote down here, and I don't remember which rune master I got this from, but it's 2 sides of the same swan, which I thought was really interesting. Because if you think about it, if you think about everything in terms of source or the creator manifesting everything into form, then everything is all that is, okay? There is nothing but the creator. Everything you see is the creator, including us. We're just aspects of the creator, learning more about tangible form. Well, in that regard, we think in terms of duality, right? But there is no such thing, not really, not in terms of spirit. It happens when we come into the body. That's where the duality is experienced because we're either a male or a female, right? So there's your basic beginnings of the duality, right? Well, but what we don't understand is we think of that in terms of either or. We don't think about it in terms of all of that saying, visualize all of it contained within a circle, okay? So you've got, say you have a circle, you draw a line down the middle, okay? You got one side, you got the other. You got either or. You got an expression of duality. You could put male, female, day, night, up, down, whatever you want to do. But we're thinking in terms of opposites. And what, as humans, we need to understand is that that's an illusion. That even though I'm a woman, there are what could be considered, if I'm assertive, that's considered a male energy, okay? So if you want to look at a push or a receptive energy, if you want to look at it as projective, receptive influences, okay? You can look at this as a male and a female. You can look at it as duality. You can look at it as receptive and projective influences. But basically, it's push, it's pull, okay? But that happens within the whole. It's not one's happening over there and one's happening over there. And if I'm over there, then I'm not over there. When in fact, we're everywhere. So if we see somebody that we don't like, say they're just a really difficult person to be around, and you just can't get along with them. They argue with you all the time. We knew this guy once. He could not stop arguing with my husband. In fact, it was the only reason he sought my husband out was to push his own views, right? And so my husband could not handle this guy. And I mean, no one could, frankly. It was just, he was just one of those guys that just couldn't just simply be with others and interact in a way that was harmonious or at least not contentious. He was always bringing, that contention into every single conversation he had. But what we have to understand, and what my husband needed to understand, is that guy is just another aspect of him. And by interacting with this guy and rising to taking the bait, basically, and allowing his ego to come into play versus allowing spirit to inform and then understand what's going on. Instead, he didn't get into it with him ever, but he felt it inside. Okay. And so and what you have to understand is, even though that looks like somebody else, it's not. If everything is source energy, then that's us, even the stuff we don't like. It's just another way to look at what's going on in life and what we could also be doing as well. The whole "there but for the grace of God go I." You just never know. You could find yourself doing things you never thought possible. Things, talking in ways that are not like you. Well, that's an expression, isn't it, of the wholeness of living, the wholeness of experience. There's no real either or, it's an illusion. And so when you see both sides of the same swan, that's what that reminds me of, is that in fact, it's spirit focusing into one unified presence collectively. That's what makes this a higher self rune. So, in fact, the guardian rune of activated higher consciousness. So, there you have it. The decision that we need to make, the priorities we're juggling, the things that are so emotional because we're worried about our financial stability, our security, maybe. Well, I know a lot of people are, because it isn't just the 800,000. It's all the people they do business with. It's all the contractors that will not get paid, simply will not get paid because they're not actually, they're not employees of the federal government. They're employed by someone else. There's no contractual obligation for the government to pay those people. And there's more of them, I believe, than there are of the 800,000. So we can either have spirit inform that process, which it's not, or we're going to have to do something about it, I guess. I don't know. Somebody's got to do something, because this is not going to work for people. People's Foundation, whether you're one of those folks that's being directly affected, or you could just be experiencing something in your life, you're having to juggle a bunch of priorities here, having to do with your home life, with your personal life, and it's an emotional situation, but it has to be done. And apparently, this is what's influencing all of it. Again, this is better than this. I don't know. I look forward to the day where I can draw cards and runes and simply have it be about stuff that's going on in our personal lives, things that we need to work on inside, things like that. I try to do this from both perspectives, but right now, what's happening collectively in our country is harming so many people on so many levels, not just having to do with the shutdown, but on so many levels. But as that continues to go on, it's just going to get worse for people. Anytime you incorporate the notion of us versus them in your life, you've lost. You've lost. If you are in a position of authority over someone and you employ that thinking, everyone loses. So I would encourage, if you are juggling priorities in your life today, and it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in our country, if you're doing that, try to think about it from a service to self, or not a service to self, but a service to others standpoint. We don't know if that's what this individual is doing. We don't know. Law of One talks about service to self and service to others. It's just basically our energetic focus. When we come into form, we make that choice. Are we going to have a focus on just the self? Or are we going to have a focus on that incorporates, the needs of other people? Can you see the bigger picture, or are you simply focused on your own needs? Both are acceptable. You can do whatever you want to when you come into form, but just understand that it's going to have consequences. If you are a service to self person and you have authority over others, if you're the parents who can't seem to stay home and keep food on the table. We had a neighbor once that the couple was going through the divorce, and mama was off with the boyfriend and drunk all the time and left the boys home. And guns were involved there. What ultimately happened involved guns. And the police were called, and she was told under no uncertain terms to return home. The police were in her house trying to deal. I mean, she would leave food, she would come home and she would leave money on the table so the kids could order pizza. And that's how the boys were living. So it's an example of where, she had to juggle parenting, she had to work and take care of her kids, and she had plenty of money to do it. Okay, she had a good paying job, so she had plenty of money to do it. There was no income issues to deal with. It was about choice, and she made the wrong one and continued long after they moved out of there to continue to make the wrong choice. So I don't know what's happened to her at this point, but probably nothing good because of the choices. Her boys ended up in all kinds of issues, and you can see why. So, she allowed this to happen. She allowed herself to be slave to her ego instead of taking care of her responsibilities of her family. She did not allow spirit to inform the process. It's like for a lot of people, they think that you work your way back to spirit. They don't understand that all along that's what we are. It's just a matter of turning our attention or our focus to it. So in any event, I think that's all I have for today. Check out the tarot reading I'm going to do. I am going to do that. I think it's going to be interesting. We'll see where it goes. It'll be quite complicated because it's a 6-card reading. And it's got lots of stuff. I'll bring the I Ching into it and some runes and whatnot into it. Although he doesn't use the Elder Futhark, and so I have to figure out, okay, what the heck is he talking about there? Which rune is he using? So if I can figure it out, I do. If not, then I just pick one. I just decide for myself what it is. But in any event, check that out over there at imsteppingaside.com. The blog is called Stepping Aside. And I wish I could have gotten that URL, but I couldn't. I had to go with imsteppingaside.com, which was fine, because it was definitely what it was. So I just decided to step aside the chaos of everything, and I renamed my blog and used to be called Eternally Dazed and Confused, and because I was. And then I decided, you know what? No, I'm not. I'm not at all. So, and then next thing you know, a few years later, that was back in 2012, I started the blog. And then I think it was it 2015 or 16 that I changed the name. And then it was last summer that I started doing this. So I just decided, you know what? I got something to say. So there you go. Anyhow, you guys take care. Be good to yourself. Be good to one another. We'll see you tomorrow, and blessed be.